Long before cities lit up the night with electric glow, before telescopes pierced the depths of space, our ancestors looked up at the same sky we see today, but what they saw was something far more magical. To them, the stars weren't just distant points of light. They were living stories, divine beings, and cosmic maps guiding every aspect of life. Picture this. You're standing on a windswept plain thousands of years ago, the air crisp and untouched by modern noise, as the Milky Way stretches above you like a river of myths. The constellations aren't just patterns, they're the footprints of gods, the outlines of sacred animals, the very fabric of creation itself. This celestial dome was humanity's first storybook, and every culture on Earth turned its pages in wonder. What's even more astonishing is how these ancient interpretations of the sky shaped entire civilizations. The movement of the sun and moon didn't just mark time, it dictated when to plant crops, when to hunt, when to celebrate, and even when to wage war. The stars were both clock and compass, guiding travelers across deserts and oceans with uncanny precision. But beyond practicality, the heavens were a mirror reflecting humanity's deepest fears and highest hopes. When drought or disaster struck, people looked upward for answers, seeing omens in eclipses or comets. The sky wasn't just observed, it was communed with, a living, breathing entity that held the secrets of life and death. Today, we'll unravel these mysteries together, tracing how prehistoric beliefs about the celestial dome shaped the world we've inherited. From the towering stone circles of Europe to the intricate star maps of Polynesia, we'll discover how ancient cultures encoded their knowledge into monuments, myths, and rituals that still echo today. You'll learn why the same constellations appear in vastly different stories across continents, how solstice alignments reveal forgotten wisdom, and what these celestial connections tell us about the universal human quest for meaning. This isn't just a journey through history, it's a chance to see the night sky as our ancestors did, where every star holds a story waiting to be remembered. So let's step into their world where the heavens weren't just above us, they were alive. To ancient eyes, the sky wasn't an endless void. It was a solid, shimmering ceiling, close enough to touch. Imagine stretching your hand toward the horizon and feeling the curve of the heavens, like the inside of a vast, upturned bowl. This was the celestial dome, a concept so universal it appears in cultures separated by oceans and millennia. The Mesopotamians called it the firmament, a bronze barrier holding back the cosmic waters above. The Norse pictured it as the skull of the giant Ymir, scattered with sparks from Muspelheim's fire. Even the indigenous peoples of the Great Plains described it as the smoke hole of the world, where spirits passed between realms. What's fascinating is how this shared vision shaped humanity's first attempts to map the cosmos. Without telescopes or satellites, ancient astronomers still tracked the sun, moon, and planets not as distant objects, but as travelers moving along the dome's surface. The stars weren't light years away, they were fixed like jewels to this rotating vault, their movements precise enough to build calendars and predict eclipses. The Maya, for instance, charted Venus's path across the dome with such accuracy their calculations were off by mere hours over centuries. This dome wasn't just a belief, it was a working model of the universe, one that guided farmers, priests, and kings alike. But the celestial dome was more than a scientific tool. It was a sacred boundary, the thin veil between the mundane and the miraculous. In Egypt, the goddess Nut arched her star-studded body over the earth, swallowing the sun each evening and giving birth to it at dawn. For the Aboriginal Australians, the dome was the embodiment of the rainbow serpent, its scales holding the stories of creation. Every eclipse, meteor shower, or shifting constellation was a message from the other side, a sign to be interpreted with reverence and fear. This blurring of science and spirituality reveals something profound. To our ancestors, the sky wasn't just observed, it was listened to, a living dialogue between heaven and earth. Even today, echoes of this belief linger in our language. We still speak of the dome of the sky or the canopy of stars, unconscious heirs to a worldview that saw the universe as intimate and interconnected. Modern astronomy may have shattered the illusion of a physical dome, but in peeling back its layers, we've uncovered something equally wondrous: the boundless creativity of the human mind, forever reaching upward to make sense of the infinite. Archaeoastronomy offers us a key to unlocking the minds of ancient sky watchers, revealing just how meticulously they mapped the heavens. Take Stonehenge, for example. Those towering stones aren't just a random arrangement. At dawn on the summer solstice, sunlight pierces through the monument's heart, casting a beam directly onto the altar stone. This wasn't accidental. It was a celestial calendar carved in stone, a way to mark the year's longest day with ritual precision. Similarly, Egypt's Great Pyramid of Giza aligns almost perfectly with true north, its narrow air shafts pointing toward stars like Sirius and Orion stars, linked to the afterlife in Egyptian mythology. These weren't just architectural feats, they were cosmic dialogues, stone conversations with the sky. What's even more striking is how widespread this knowledge was. In the Americas, the Maya built El Caracol, an observatory with windows aligned to Venus's most extreme positions on the horizon. They tracked its cycles so closely they could predict its appearances centuries in advance, tying them to sacred ceremonies and agricultural cycles. Meanwhile, in what's now New Mexico, the ancestral Pueblones carved spiral petroglyphs that catch dagger-like sunlight during solstices and equinoxes, turning rock art into a solar calendar. These cultures, separated by continents and millennia, all shared a common impulse: to weave the sky's rhythms into the fabric of daily life. But archaeoastronomy isn't just about decoding alignment, it's about understanding why these connections mattered. For ancient societies, celestial events weren't abstract phenomena, they were divine interventions. An eclipse might signal a god's displeasure, while the heliacal rising of a star could herald the flooding of the Nile, essential for survival. The sky was both clock and covenant, a contract between humanity and the cosmos. This blend of science and spirituality challenges our modern divide between the practical and the sacred. These builders didn't just observe the stars, they partnered with them, creating monuments that were as much temples as they were observatories. Today, this field continues to rewrite history. Recent LiDAR scans of Cambodia's Angkor Wat complex revealed hidden alignments to the winter solstice, suggesting the temple mirrored the Hindu cosmos in stone. Even older, Germany's Goseck Circle, a Neolithic structure predating Stonehenge by 2,000 years, marks solar events with eerie accuracy. Each discovery peels back another layer, showing us that prehistoric people weren't primitive stargazers. They were master astronomers who encoded their knowledge in landscapes, turning the Earth itself into a mirror of the heavens. Their legacy reminds us that the night sky was humanity's first classroom, and its lessons were written in light and shadow. To understand why the sun held such sacred power for ancient cultures, we need only step outside at dawn. That first golden light breaking over the horizon wasn't just daylight to our ancestors, it was divinity made visible. In Egypt, the sun god Ra sailed his fiery bark across the daytime sky, waging eternal war against the serpent Apophis who sought to drag the world into eternal night. This wasn't mere poetry, it was a cosmic drama playing out daily, explaining why the sun rose predictably each morning despite the chaos of darkness. The Egyptians even built their temples with precise alignments so Ra's first rays would illuminate sacred statues at key dates, turning architecture into acts of worship. The Aztecs took this reverence even further. Their sun god Tanatia demanded blood sacrifices to keep moving across the sky, a belief rooted in very real astronomical observations. They'd witnessed how the sun's strength waned in winter, only to be reborn at solstice. To them, human hearts provided the spiritual fuel preventing cosmic collapse. Their famous sun stone, often called the Aztec calendar, isn't just a timekeeping device but a map of this divine contract, with Tanateo's face at the center surrounded by symbols of past world ages. Each era had ended in catastrophe until the fifth sun, their present age, was born through self-sacrifice. This mythology wasn't abstract. It shaped laws, wars, and even the layout of Tenochtitlan, their island city designed as a cosmic mirror. What's remarkable is how these solar myths share uncanny similarities across unconnected civilizations. The Norse had Sol, chased across the sky by wolves. The Japanese worshipped Amaterasu, the sun goddess who hid in a cave until lured out by dance. The Hindu Surya rode a chariot pulled by 7 horses. These parallels suggest something profound about human psychology. When faced with that blazing orb that dictates life and death, cultures worldwide arrived at similar metaphors. The sun wasn't just a god, it was the ultimate symbol of cyclical renewal, of light defeating darkness, of order triumphing over chaos. But these myths also contained sophisticated astronomy. The Hopi people of North America, for instance, marked the sun's changing positions with horizon calendar stone structures that cast shadows tracking solstices and equinoxes. Their ceremonial calendar wasn't based on abstract months but the sun's journey along the celestial dome's pathway, marked by specific landmarks. Similarly, the Incas in Raimi festival celebrated the winter solstice, when the sun reached its farthest point before returning to nourish crops again. These weren't arbitrary dates but precise astronomical events wrapped in sacred meaning. Perhaps most moving is how these solar deities blurred the line between celestial and human. The Egyptian pharaoh was considered Ra's earthly embodiment, just as Japan's emperor traced lineage to Amaterasu. This divine kinship created a powerful social contract. If leaders failed to maintain cosmic order, Mat in Egypt, Teotl for the Aztecs, the sun might not rise. It's no coincidence that many solar myths feature the sun's temporary disappearance, whether during eclipses or the 3 days dark of winter solstice celebrations. These stories served as moral compasses, reminding societies that harmony with celestial rhythms wasn't optional, it was survival. Today, we understand the sun as a nuclear furnace rather than a divine chariot, but its primal power remains. Modern solar observatories continue ancient traditions of tracking sunspots and solar cycles, now knowing these affect everything from satellite communications to climate patterns. The language has changed, but the awe hasn't. When we witness a total solar eclipse, that primal shiver down our spines connects us directly to those ancient sky watchers who saw not an astronomical event, but the momentary triumph of darkness over light. Their myths live on every time we speak of the sun coming up, rather than Earth turning, every solstice celebration, even in our instinct to face sunrise when seeking hope. The celestial dome may be gone from our cosmology, but the sun's journey across our collective imagination continues as brightly as ever. While the sun represented constancy and power, the moon captivated ancient imaginations with its ever-changing face. Night after night, it waxed and waned in a celestial dance that mirrored life's own cycles: birth, growth, decay, and rebirth. For prehistoric cultures, this luminous orb wasn't just a light in the darkness. It was a living embodiment of transformation, often tied to feminine divinity. The Mesopotamians worshipped Sin, the moon god whose crescent crown resembled the very shape of the night sky's most visible clock. His phases didn't just mark time, they dictated the rhythms of agriculture, trade, and religious festivals, proving the moon's influence reached far beyond myth. But the moon's mystique went deeper than calendars. In the Andes, the Inca revered Mama Quilla, the moon goddess whose silver tears were said to form the stars. She wasn't just a celestial body, she was the protector of women, governing fertility, childbirth, and even the sacred bonds of marriage. Temples dedicated to her featured metallic mirrors polished to reflect moonlight, creating a tangible connection between Earth and the heavens. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, the Norse saw the moon as a celestial chariot chased by wolves, its phases explained as moments when the predators nearly caught their prey. These stories weren't mere folklore, they were attempts to explain the unexplainable, to personify the moon's eerie, shifting presence. Few celestial events stirred more fear than a lunar eclipse. To the ancient Chinese, it signaled a dragon devouring the moon, prompting villagers to bang pots and drums to scare the beast away. The Maya believed eclipses threatened the cosmic order, requiring bloodletting rituals to nourish the gods and restore balance. Even in Europe, where the moon was often linked to witchcraft, an eclipse could send entire villages into panic, seen as an omen of plague or war. What's fascinating is how these disparate cultures separated by oceans shared near identical responses: noise, sacrifice, prayer. The moon's sudden darkening wasn't just an astronomical event. It was a breach in the natural order, demanding human intervention. Yet the moon also offered comfort. Its predictable cycles provided a framework for early timekeeping. The very word month derives from moon. Neolithic monuments like Ireland's Noath Passage tomb feature intricate carvings thought to track lunar phases, proving how deeply this rhythm was etched into human consciousness. For seafaring Polynesians, the moon's position guided voyages across vast oceans, its light revealing tidal patterns invisible to the untrained eye. And in West Africa, the Dogon people's lunar mythology included startlingly accurate knowledge of the moon's surface, passed down through oral traditions long before telescopes existed. Perhaps the moon's greatest legacy is how it blurred the line between science and spirit. Ancient priests who tracked its cycles were both astronomers and mystics, seeing divine messages in celestial mechanics. The moon's association with fertility, seen in everything from menstrual cycles to planting lore, reveals how tightly our ancestors tied cosmic patterns to earthly life. Even today, echoes of these beliefs linger. We still speak of lunacy linking the moon to madness, or celebrate harvest moons that once dictated critical farming deadlines. The moon may no longer be a goddess or an omen, but its pull remains undeniable, a silent witness to humanity's eternal quest to find meaning in the night's silver glow. Look up at Orion tonight, and you're seeing more than just stars. You're glimpsing a story older than written language, that distinctive belt of three bright stars. To the ancient Greeks, it marked the hunter Orion's girdle, forever pursuing the Pleiades across the sky while fending off Taurus the bull. But cross the globe to Australia's Arnhem Land, and those same stars transform into a canoe filled with fishermen from the Yolngu people's creation stories. This celestial Rorschach test reveals a profound truth. Constellations weren't just pretty patterns, they were prehistoric humanity's ultimate storytelling canvas, where every culture projected its deepest myths onto the starry dome. The practical brilliance of these star stories often gets overlooked. For the Inuit navigating Arctic darkness, the Pleiades cluster became Sakiashak, 6 brothers who fell through ice, their position indicating when sea ice was safest to travel. Polynesian voyagers memorized Hoku Lea, our modern Arcturus, as the guiding star to Hawaii, its zenith passage marking the archipelago's latitude. Even the apparent empty spaces held meaning. The dark dust clouds of the Milky Way became the emu in the sky for Aboriginal Australians, its seasonal orientation signaling when to gather eggs. These weren't arbitrary tales but sophisticated knowledge systems, encoding survival information in stellar patterns passed down through song and ceremony. What's truly astonishing is how these celestial stories converged across unconnected cultures. The Big Dipper's ladle shape inspired similar bear myths, from Greece's Callisto transformed into Ursa Major to Native American tales where the constellation represents a bear pursued by hunters. The scorching star Sirius marked the Nile's flooding in Egypt as Sopdet, while halfway across the world, the Dogon people of Mali linked it to their creation epic. These parallels suggest something fundamental about human cognition. When faced with the overwhelming vastness of the night sky, we instinctively sought familiar shapes and narratives to impose order on the cosmos. Archaeoastronomers have discovered these stories were often etched into landscapes. Scotland's recumbent stone circles frame Orion's belt between their largest monoliths during winter solstice, mirroring myths of stone giants frozen in the sky. The Pawnee tribe's earth lodges aligned with the morning star's position during their sacred bundle ceremonies, blending architecture with celestial drama. Even today, Navajo star ceilings painted replicas of constellations on ceremonial hogans maintain this ancient tradition of bringing the cosmos indoors. These physical manifestations prove star lore wasn't just observation. It was participatory theater where humanity played its part in an endless celestial performance. Perhaps most moving is how these stories endure. Modern astronomers still use constellation names from Ptolemy's 2,000-year-old star catalogue, while Marshall Islands stick charts preserve wave navigation techniques encoded in star paths. When we point out Orion to children today, we're part of an unbroken chain stretching back to the first storytellers who saw not random dots, but epic tales written in light. The stars haven't changed, but by learning their ancient names and narratives, we reclaim our ancestors' awe, seeing the night sky not as a void to be conquered, but as the world's oldest storybook, its pages glowing above us every clear night. Stretching across the night sky like spilled stardust, the Milky Way has always been more than just a band of light. It was humanity's first cosmic highway. To the ancient Egyptians, this shimmering arc mirrored their life-giving Nile, a celestial twin flowing through the realm of gods. They called it the winding waterway, where Ra's solar bark sailed by day and the souls of the dead traveled by night. But in Scandinavia, the same glowing path became Bifrost, the flaming rainbow bridge connecting Asgard to Midgard, where gods walked between worlds. These weren't just poetic metaphors, they were maps of belief, weaving the physical and spiritual into a single luminous thread. For the Lakota people of North America, the Milky Way was the spirit road, a ghostly trail guiding departed ancestors to the Star Nation. Funeral ceremonies included placing the deceased's belongings in a spirit bundle, pointed toward the celestial path to ensure safe passage. Similarly, the Quechua-speaking peoples of the Andes saw it as Mayu, the heavenly river mirroring the Vilcanota River below, with stars as celestial fish swimming toward the cosmic sea. What's striking is how these cultures, separated by continents and centuries, all envisioned the Milky Way as a conduit between realms, a bridge between the mortal and the divine. The Milky Way's role in creation myths reveals even deeper connections. Aboriginal Australians describe it as the footprint of the emu in the sky, its seasonal position signaling when to gather eggs, a practical calendar woven into sacred lore. Meanwhile, Finnish tradition tells of the cosmic maiden Lau, stealing the sun and moon, scattering sparks that became the Milky Way during her flight. These stories did more than explain the night sky. They anchored entire worldviews, teaching moral lessons and ecological wisdom through celestial allegory. Perhaps most fascinating are the astronomical insights hidden within these myths. The Polynesians, master navigators of the Pacific, used the Milky Way as a compass. Its position relative to the horizon helped them pinpoint islands thousands of miles apart, knowledge preserved in chants like the Hawaiian creation chant, Cumulipo, which describes the universe birthing from the sparkling darkness of the galactic core. Even the ancient Maya depicted the Milky Way in the Dresden Codex as the world tree, its dark dust clouds forming the skeletal branches of the underworld. Modern astrophysics confirms what these cultures intuited. Our galaxy is a river of stars, with Earth merely a speck riding its current. Today, light pollution obscures this celestial wonder for many, but its cultural legacy endures. When we gaze at the Milky Way, we're seeing what countless generations before us saw: not just stars, but stories written in light. The same band that inspired Viking warriors to envision a bridge to Valhalla now guides astronomers probing the origins of the universe. Science may have replaced myth, but the awe remains unchanged, a reminder that humanity's oldest questions about life, death, and our place in the cosmos were first whispered under this river of stars. When day suddenly turned to night, ancient civilizations didn't see an eclipse as we do, a predictable alignment of celestial bodies. To them, it was nothing short of cosmic warfare. In Mesopotamia, eclipses signaled the god's wrath, often foretelling the death of kings. Royal scribes meticulously recorded these events on cuneiform tablets, noting how the sun's disappearance coincided with plagues or invasions. The Babylonians went further, developing intricate eclipse cycles called saros that allowed priests to predict these celestial upheavals centuries in advance. Imagine the power these astronomers held, armed with nothing but observation and mathematics. They could stand before terrified crowds and declare, "The sun will darken next spring," turning panic into awe. Halfway across the world, the Inca reacted differently. As the sun vanished, they plunged spears into the ground, symbolically anchoring it to earth before it could flee forever. Priests fasted, warriors abstained from intimacy, and dogs were tied up, believing their howls might distract the gods from restoring light. Meanwhile, in ancient China, eclipse rituals involved the entire population banging pots and shooting arrows skyward to frighten the celestial dragon swallowing the sun. The same event that inspired Inca solemnity sparked Chinese cacophony, proving how cultures molded universal fears into distinct cosmic dramas. What's remarkable is how these eclipse myths often mirrored real-world conflicts. The Norse spoke of Skurll and Hati, two wolves eternally chasing the sun and moon, finally catching their prey during eclipses. This wasn't just storytelling, it reflected the Viking understanding of balance. Just as wolves threatened their flocks, celestial wolves threatened the cosmic order, requiring human intervention through chants and bonfires. Similarly, Hindu texts describe the demon Rahu decapitated by Vishnu, his flying head occasionally swallowing the sun before it escapes through his severed neck. These weren't arbitrary monsters, they embodied chaos, their periodic victories over light serving as moral reminders of fragility. Eclipse records also reveal unexpected scientific sophistication. Clay tablets from Yurok describe not just eclipses but their exact durations and solar corona appearances, details only visible during totality. The Maya Dresden Codex contains an eclipse table so accurate it accounted for seasonal variations in Earth's rotation. Even more astonishing, Neolithic petroglyphs in Ireland's Loughcrew Hills appear to depict a 5,000-year-old solar eclipse with spiral carvings mimicking the sun's corona. These artifacts shatter the myth that ancient people were purely superstitious. They paired terror with tireless observation, transforming celestial omens into calculable patterns. Perhaps the most poignant eclipse tradition belonged to the Tolton people of northwestern Canada. During totality, they'd cover all food and water, fearing the sun's poisoned breath would contaminate it. Children were hidden indoors, and adults avoided looking skyward until elders confirmed the sun's return. This blend of practical caution and spiritual reverence captures the dual nature of eclipse beliefs worldwide, a moment when science and sacredness intertwined. Today, we might no longer fear celestial dragons or poisoned sunlight, but when the sky darkens at midday, that primal awe still lingers. The shadows racing across the ground, the sudden chill in the air. For a few fleeting minutes, we become like our ancestors, united under the spell of a sky that still holds the power to astonish. Imagine setting sail across thousands of miles of open ocean with no GPS, no compass, just the stars as your guide. This was the daily reality for Polynesian voyagers, whose celestial navigation skills remain unmatched in human history. They didn't just glance at the night sky, they memorized it like a sailor memorizes waves, reading star paths known as Kauai. With such precision, they could detect subtle shifts in a star's position caused by currents beneath their canoes. The key was zenith stars, those that passed directly overhead at specific latitudes. When Hoculaire Arcturus reached its zenith, navigators knew they'd arrived at Hawaii's latitude, a technique so reliable it's still taught in wayfinding schools today. But Polynesians weren't alone in their cosmic map-making. The ancient Phoenicians, master traders of the Mediterranean, relied on the North Star long before it was called Polaris. Unlike other stars that appear to move, this fixed point near the celestial pole became their unwavering reference, guiding ships from Tyre to Britain with astonishing accuracy. Their secret, a simple yet brilliant tool called the Phoenician Star Tablet, a wooden disc with notches marking key stars' positions throughout the year. By aligning it with the horizon, a navigator could determine latitude even in unfamiliar waters, proving that celestial navigation wasn't just about observation, it was about innovation. Inland desert nomads like the Tuareg used different but equally ingenious methods. Instead of zenith stars, they tracked the camel of the sky, our modern Orion, to traverse the Sahara's shifting dunes. The belt star's orientation indicated true north, while their seasonal movements signaled when to seek oases before waterholes dried up. Meanwhile, the Chumash people of California's coast painted star charts on cave walls, using the Pleiades heliacal rising to time their maritime harvests, blending astronomy with ecology in ways modern science is only beginning to appreciate. What's often overlooked is how these systems encoded physics long before Newton. Polynesian navigators understood that stars lower on the horizon appear to twinkle more due to atmospheric refraction, a clue to distant landmasses. The Vikings' sunstone, possibly calcite or cordierite, filtered polarized light to locate the sun through overcast skies, a trick later validated by optical science. These weren't just survival tricks, they were empirical sciences honed over generations, where a single misread star could mean death. The true marvel lies in how these techniques transformed the celestial dome into a living instrument. Aboriginal Australians used songlines, oral maps where landscape features corresponded to stars, allowing them to navigate vast distances by singing constellations into existence. The Marshall Islands stick charts, woven from palm fibers, didn't depict stars at all but wave patterns created by distant atolls, showing how celestial navigation intertwined with oceanography. Every culture's method reflected its environment, yet all shared one profound insight. The sky wasn't just above them, it was part of them, a compass woven into their bones. Today, satellite navigation has made these skills rare, but their legacy endures. Modern astronauts still train in celestial navigation as a backup system, and the same stars that guided Magellan now help calibrate space telescopes. When we look up at Orion's belt or the North Star, we're seeing the same fixed points that once steered entire civilizations. Proof that humanity's first great technology wasn't the wheel or the plow, but the night sky itself, patiently waiting to show us the way home. Long before horoscopes became newspaper filler, the Zodiac was humanity's first attempt to map personality onto the cosmos. It all began in Mesopotamia around 3,000 years ago, where Babylonian astronomers tracked the sun's path through 12 constellations, a celestial highway they called the ecliptic. These weren't just star patterns, they were seasonal markers, each corresponding to key agricultural events. When the sun entered Aries, it signaled spring lambing season. Libra's arrival meant autumn equinox, time to balance harvest accounts. This was astrology in its purest form, a fusion of astronomy and survival, where the sky's movements dictated earthly rhythms. What's fascinating is how these practical observations evolved into something deeply personal. By the 5th century BCE, Babylonian star charts began associating constellations with human traits likely inspired by their gods' personalities. The lion-hearted Leo mirrored their warrior goddess Ishtar, while meticulous Virgo reflected Shola, deity of grain and measurement. When this system reached Greece, it merged with their own mythology, transforming into the zodiac we recognize today. Ptolemy's Tetrabiblos, written in the 2nd century CE, codified these ideas, claiming planetary positions at birth could shape temperament. Suddenly, the stars weren't just guiding crops, they were scripting human destinies. Archaeology reveals how seriously ancient cultures took these celestial influences. A 1st century BCE zodiac wheel from Dendera, Egypt, carved into temple ceilings, shows Taurus as the bull god, Apis, a direct link between cosmic and earthly realms. Roman emperors consulted astrologers before major decisions, while in Han Dynasty China, officials used zodiacal omens to validate imperial mandates. Even skepticism had ancient roots. Cicero famously mocked astrology into divination, yet his contemporaries wore gemstone rings aligned with their birth signs for protection. This tension between faith and doubt mirrors modern debates, proving how little our relationship with the stars has fundamentally changed. The zodiac's endurance lies in its adaptability. Medieval Islamic scholars like al-Birni refined Babylonian calculations while rejecting fatalism, viewing stars as influences rather than dictators. Renaissance artists embedded zodiac motifs into cathedrals, blending Christian iconography with cosmic symbolism. Today, we might dismiss daily horoscopes, but the zodiac's framework persists in unexpected ways, from Jung's archetypal psychology to Nas, a decision to keep the 12-sign system for celestial navigation. Whether as metaphor or map, these ancient star stories still orbit our collective imagination, reminding us that the desire to see ourselves reflected in the heavens is as old as civilization itself. Deep in the caves of Lascaux, amidst the stunning depictions of bison and horses, lies something far more mysterious, a series of dots and strange markings that some researchers believe form an ancient star chart. Near the famous Great Black Bull, clusters of dots align precisely with the stars of the Taurus constellation, as they would have appeared 17,000 years ago, including the Hyades cluster that forms the bull's face. These aren't random specks, their arrangement matches the celestial pattern with startling accuracy, suggesting the artists weren't just painting animals, they were mapping the heavens above them. This theory gains weight when we examine other cave sites. In Spain's El Castillo cave, a red disk painted over 40,000 years ago might represent a supernova bright enough to outshine the moon, an event so cataclysmic it would have captivated early humans. Nearby at Altamira, abstract symbols resembling crescent moons and radiating lines could document lunar phases or even eclipses. What's remarkable is the consistency. From France's Chauvet cave to Turkey's Göbekli Tepe, similar symbols recur across millennia and continents, hinting at a shared celestial vocabulary long before written language. But why paint the sky underground? Darkness held power for prehistoric cultures. Caves weren't just shelters, they were sacred portals where shamans communed with the spirit world. By capturing celestial events in these hidden chambers, artists may have been attempting to harness cosmic forces, turning cave walls into ritual calendars or spiritual batteries. The famous shaft scene in Lascaux, showing a bird-headed man collapsing before a wounded bison, might depict more than a hunt. Some scholars suggest it illustrates the moment the constellation Orion, the man, sets as Taurus, the bison rises, marking a significant seasonal transition. Critics argue these interpretations are speculative, and they're not wrong. Without written records, we can't know for certain, yet the evidence mounts. In Germany's Geisenkloster cave, mammoth ivory carvings show the same dot patterns found on cave walls, some arranged in sequences that mirror lunar cycles. Even more compelling, many cave paintings appear in chambers aligned with solstice sunlight, where beams illuminate specific artworks only during key astronomical events. This isn't coincidence, it's intentional design, blending art, astronomy, and spirituality into a single practice. What emerges is a radical rethinking of prehistoric people. They weren't merely struggling to survive, they were stargazers, timekeepers, and philosophers recording their cosmos in the only medium they had. Those dots beside a painted aurochs might be stars. That handprint could mark a celestial event witnessed once in a lifetime. If correct, these caves aren't just galleries, they're observatories, classrooms, and perhaps humanity's first attempts to answer the eternal question: where do we fit in this vast, glittering universe? Stonehenge's towering trilithons framing the sunrise on summer solstice may be iconic, but this Neolithic masterpiece is far from alone. Across the Atlantic, Peru's Chanquillo fortress boasts 13 stone towers arranged like a rocky comb along a hilltop, a solar calendar so precise that watching the sunrise shift between these towers marked dates accurate to within 2 days. Meanwhile, Ireland's Newgrange Passage tomb, older than the pyramids by centuries, features a roof box perfectly aligned to flood its inner chamber with winter solstice sunlight for 17 fleeting minutes. These weren't isolated marvels, they were nodes in a global network of stone computers, where ancient architects encoded celestial knowledge into landscapes. What's truly staggering is the precision these builders achieved without modern tools. The Callanish stones in Scotland's Outer Hebrides align not just with solstices, but with the moon's 18.6-year cycle, a phenomenon where our lunar companion skims unusually low along the horizon. Similarly, Wyoming's Bighorn Medicine Wheel, a spoked stone pattern high in the Rockies, marks both summer solstice and the heliacal rising of Sirius, the brightest star. These alignments required generations of observation, suggesting these sites weren't built in years but cultivated over centuries as astronomical knowledge deepened. The stones themselves tell this story. At Carnac in France, over 3,000 megaliths stretch for miles, their rows oriented to lunar extremes like a petrified star chart. But these observatories did more than track time, they anchored entire cosmologies. In Peru's Sacred Valley, the Incas carved Intihuatana stones, or hitching posts of the sun, designed to literally hold the sun in place during solstices. At Cambodia's Angkor Wat, the temple's western gate aligns with the spring equinox sun, causing its shadow to perfectly frame the central tower, a symbolic union of earthly and divine power. Even in poverty-stricken modern-day Rajasthan, local farmers still use 4,000-year-old stone observatories to predict monsoons, proving these technologies weren't just ceremonial but vital to survival. The most haunting mystery isn't how they built these structures, but why they invested such labor. The answer lies in their worldview. For them, the celestial dome wasn't distant but intimately close, its movements directly influencing crops, seasons, and fate. At Ireland's Loughcrew cairns, sunlight entering during equinoxes illuminates carvings of sun symbols, literally bringing the sky's power into the tomb. Similarly, Malta's Haga Kim Temple's elliptical chambers amplify the sound of chants during solstice sunrises, creating acoustic resonance that must have felt like communing with the gods. These sites weren't passive observatories, they were interactive theaters where humanity danced with the cosmos. Modern archaeology continues uncovering their sophistication. Recent laser scans of Guatemala's Mayan city of Tikal revealed that its pyramids align not just to solstices, but to Venus's extremes, proof of a celestial precision we once attributed only to later civilizations. Even more astonishing, Turkey's Göbekli Tepe, dating back 12,000 years, features pillars carved with constellations as they appeared during the Younger Dryas period, suggesting Ice Age hunter-gatherers were already mapping the heavens. Each discovery shatters assumptions, revealing a prehistoric world where stone and sky were partners in an eternal dialogue, one we're only beginning to decipher. What unites these global sites is their creators' shared insight that understanding the heavens wasn't just practical but sacred. Whether it's the Navajo's vision of the Milky Way as a celestial cornfield or the Druids seeing Stonehenge as a portal to the otherworld, these monuments remind us that for ancient cultures, astronomy and spirituality were inseparable. The stones still stand not as ruins, but as witnesses to humanity's first great collaboration with the cosmos, a partnership written in alignments that continue to awe us millennia later. Among the silent ruins of Crete's Minoan palaces, archaeologists have uncovered something extraordinary: altars adorned with golden bees and bulls, positioned to catch the first rays of the equinox sun. These weren't just decorative, they were portals to the divine. The Minoans, Europe's first advanced civilization, likely worshipped a celestial bull, linking the constellation Taurus to their earth-shaking rituals. Frescoes show priestesses leaping over horns beneath starry skies, a sacred dance mirroring the Pleiades' movement across the heavens. For them, the sky wasn't separate from religion. It was religion, a living tapestry where gods and stars were one. At Göbekli Tepe, the world's oldest temple complex, the mystery deepens. Its T-shaped pillars, carved 12,000 years ago, don't just depict animals, they map the night sky. Vultures, scorpions, and foxes align with constellations as they appeared during the Younger Dryas period, a time of climatic chaos. The builders may have seen meteor showers as divine wrath, comets as omens, and the Milky Way as a pathway for spirits. Recent excavations reveal stone bowls with carved notches tracking lunar cycles, suggesting rituals timed to celestial events. This wasn't mere stargazing. It was a desperate dialogue with the cosmos, an attempt to appease forces beyond human control through sacrifice and alignment. The connection between sky and sacrifice emerges globally. In Peru's Chavin culture, priests conducted ceremonies in windowless temples until solstice light pierced specially designed ducts, illuminating hidden idols like celestial spotlights. The Maya pierced their tongues to collect blood for Venus, believing the morning star demanded payment for its return. Even Stonehenge's bluestones, dragged hundreds of miles, may have been chosen not just for their durability but for their celestial resonance. Some sparkle with embedded quartz that would have glittered like stars in torchlight during winter solstice ceremonies. These acts reveal a universal truth. For ancient cultures, the sky wasn't passive. It was a participant, a hungry god that needed feeding, a king that required tribute, a parent that demanded proof of devotion. What's haunting is how these astral cults saw divinity in celestial violence. When a meteorite struck Egypt's western desert around 2,800 years ago, the impact glass became sacred. Pharaohs fashioned it into scarabs, believing it carried the essence of the warrior god Montu, who'd hurled it from the heavens. Similarly, the Aztecs treasured sky iron from meteorites, forging it into sacrificial blades to mirror the god's own weapons. Comet sightings sparked global panic. Chinese astronomers recorded broom stars as harbingers of dynastic collapse, while Norse scouts described them as the fiery breath of Fenrir's wolf children. These weren't just natural phenomena, they were divine interventions, moments when the celestial dome cracked open to reveal its will. Yet sky worship wasn't just about fear, it was about belonging. The Pawnee Morning Star ceremony, which survived into the 19th century, reenacted the planet Venus's mythical marriage to the first human. A young captive, dressed in sacred regalia, became the celestial bridegroom, his ritual death ensuring the sun's renewal. For the Dogon of Mali, whose astronomy baffled modern scientists with its knowledge of Sirius's invisible companion star, the sky was a family tree. Their creation myths describe ancestral beings descending from the Pleiades in ark-like vessels, blending cosmic origins with human identity. This duality, the heavens as both threat and kin, shaped rituals where worshippers didn't just observe the cosmos but claimed their place within it. The legacy of these astral cults lingers in unexpected ways. Christian churches built over Mithraic temples often retain their solar alignments, their stained glass transforming solstice light into divine radiance. Japanese Shinto shrines still honor Amaterasu's sun mirror, while Hindu temples from Khajuraho to Angkor Wat encode planetary positions in their layouts. Even our word disaster comes from the Latin disastrum, against the stars, a reminder that for millennia human fate was written in celestial ink. Though our telescopes have demystified the mechanics of comets and eclipses, that primal awe remains. When we gasp at a shooting star or instinctively make wishes on the first evening star, we're whispering across time to those ancient sky watchers who knew, bone deep, that the heavens were alive. When a comet blazed across the sky in 1066, the Anglo-Saxons didn't see a ball of ice and dust, they saw a flaming sword of doom. The Bayeux Tapestry immortalized this moment, stitching Halley's comet above terrified crowds just before William the Conqueror's invasion. To them, the cosmos wasn't just putting on a light show, it was delivering an unmistakable verdict. Change was coming, and it would arrive on Norman swords. This belief in celestial messages wasn't unique to medieval Europe. Halfway across the world, the Anasazi people of the American Southwest carved spirals and jagged rays into canyon walls, petroglyphs that some scholars believe record the explosive brilliance of the supernova that created the Crab Nebula in 1054. These weren't random doodles, they were urgent memos from the heavens, etched in stone for future generations. The Terra Comets inspired reveals how deeply ancient cultures linked celestial events to earthly turmoil. Roman historians described comets as hairy stars portending the deaths of emperors, while the Incas saw them as the fiery breath of Viracocha, the creator god, expressing his displeasure. In China, court astronomers kept meticulous records of broom stars, noting how their appearances often preceded droughts, rebellions, or the fall of dynasties. The sheer variety of interpretations, from divine war banners to celestial brooms sweeping away old regimes, shows how these unpredictable visitors became universal canvases for human anxiety. Even the word disaster carries this ancient fear in its roots, coming from the Latin for bad star. Meteors, those brief streaks of light we now call shooting stars, held even more intimate meaning. The Islamic world revered them as arrows shot by angels to drive away demons eavesdropping near heaven's gates, a belief that may have originated from actual meteor showers during key religious nights. The indigenous Ojibwe people of North America saw them as sparks from the fire of Nanabojo, the trickster spirit, carrying messages between worlds. What's striking is how these fleeting flashes inspired such lasting reverence. The black stone embedded in the Kaaba in Mecca, Islam's holiest site, is widely believed to be a meteorite, a literal piece of the divine that fell to earth. Similarly, the ancient Greeks worshipped the conical stone of Artemis at Ephesus, likely a meteorite, as a manifestation of the goddess herself. But perhaps most poignant are the silent witnesses, the artifacts that prove how profoundly these events shaped human behavior. In the ruins of Nineveh, archaeologists uncovered Assyrian clay tablets describing a comet's appearance coinciding with a devastating plague, prompting King Esarhaddon to publicly repent for his sins. In North America, the Pawnee people timed their morning star sacrifice ceremony to Venus's appearance, but oral histories suggest the ritual intensified after witnessing a spectacular meteor storm in the early 19th century. Even the layout of cities reflected this celestial anxiety. Mayan rulers often built their temples aligned to significant meteor shower radiance, as if to harness their chaotic energy. Modern science has stripped comets and meteors of their divine status, revealing them as cosmic debris left over from the solar system's birth. Yet something primal still stirs when we witness a fireball streak across the night sky or catch news of an approaching comet. That gasp, that momentary pause, it's the echo of our ancestors looking up and wondering not just what these lights were, but what they meant. In demystifying the mechanics, we've gained knowledge but lost a certain intimacy with the cosmos. The next time you see a meteor, try seeing it as they did, not as space rock burning up, but as the universe whispering in a language we're still learning to decipher. The North Star's unwavering presence in the night sky wasn't just a navigational aid. It was a cosmic constant that shaped humanity's understanding of the universe. While other stars wheeled around it in nightly procession, this single point of light remained fixed, becoming the literal pivot around which ancient civilizations built their worldviews. The ancient Chinese weren't merely poetic when they named it the Great Imperial Ruler. They saw it as the celestial counterpart to their emperor, the unmoving center around which all earthly affairs revolved. Court astronomers would carefully monitor its position, believing subtle shifts could signal heavenly approval or displeasure with the ruling dynasty. For seafaring cultures, the pole star's reliability meant survival. Arab navigators called it Al-Jar, the forgotten one, because while other stars moved, this one stayed constant, a beacon for desert caravans and ocean voyages alike. The Vikings took this reverence further in their mythology, envisioning the star as the nail holding the celestial dome in place, with all other stars tethered to it like sparks from a blacksmith's anvil. Their entire cosmology rotated around this fixed point, with the world tree Yggdrasil's roots stretching upward to meet it, connecting heaven and earth in an eternal axis. What's fascinating is how this single star became a universal touchstone across disconnected cultures. The ancient Egyptians aligned the narrow air shafts of the Great Pyramid not just to Orion's belt, but to Thuban, the pole star of their era, creating a stone pathway for pharaohs' souls to ascend. Siberian shamans described it as the world navel, the point where the sky's umbilical cord connected to the earth. Even the Skiddy Pony of North America built their earth lodges with ceiling holes aligned to Polaris, transforming their homes into miniature observatories where every night became a sacred lesson in cosmic order. The star's scientific importance was equally profound. Greek astronomers like Pytheas used its fixed position to calculate latitudes as early as the 4th century BCE, while Polynesian wayfinders memorized its height above the horizon to judge their distance from the equator. Medieval Islamic scholars refined these measurements, with al-Battani determining the Earth's axial tilt by tracking the star's slight movements, knowledge that would later enable European explorers to venture across open oceans. This blend of mythology and mathematics reveals how the pole star served as humanity's first stable reference point in an otherwise chaotic cosmos. Yet the star's permanence is an illusion, a trick of cosmic perspective. Due to the Earth's wobbling axis, a phenomenon called precession, the title of pole star changes over millennia. While Polaris holds the position today, 5,000 years ago it belonged to Thuban in Draco, and in 12,000 years it will be Vega in Lyra. Ancient cultures unaware of this cycle often interpreted these gradual shifts as omens. Some scholars believe the decline of Egypt's Old Kingdom coincided with Thuban's displacement as the true North Star, its fading prominence mirroring the pharaoh's waning power. Modern astronomy may have demystified the pole star's mechanics, but its symbolic power endures. Space missions still use it for celestial navigation as a fail-safe system, while urban stargazers take comfort in its constancy amid light-polluted skies. When we look at Polaris today, we're seeing what countless generations before us saw: not just a navigational tool, but a reminder that even in a universe of constant change, there are still points of reference to guide us home. Long before mechanical clocks divided our days into hours and minutes, humanity kept time by the grandest clock of all, the turning heavens themselves. The Mayans didn't just watch the stars, they built an entire civilization around their movements, developing 3 interlocking calendars so precise they could predict celestial events centuries in advance. Their long count calendar, spanning over 5,000 years, wasn't merely a way to mark days. It was a cosmic countdown to what they believed were cyclical rebirths of the world. Each interval tied to the positions of Venus and the Pleiades, their sacred, rattlesnake stars, whose appearances dictated when to plant maize or wage war. Meanwhile, the Egyptians anchored their calendar to the Nile's life-giving floods, which coincided with the heliacal rising of Sirius. When this brightest star first reappeared at dawn after months of invisibility, it signaled not just a new year but a divine intervention. The goddess Sopdet returning with waters that would nourish the kingdom. These systems reveal a profound truth. Ancient calendars weren't just tools but sacred contracts between earth and sky. The Babylonians, master astronomers of Mesopotamia, divided the year into 12 lunar months, adding extra months when needed to keep festivals aligned with seasons, a practice that evolved into our modern leap year. Their Zodiac, originally a farming almanac tied to constellations, later became a celestial map of human destiny. Similarly, China's lunisolar calendar integrated moon phases with solar terms like spring begins and grain rain, guiding farmers with poetic precision. Even Stone Age monuments like Ireland's Newgrange, older than the pyramids, functioned as colossal calendar stones, where solstice sunlight illuminated inner chambers like a celestial spotlight marking the year's turn. What's astonishing is how these cultures independently converged on similar solutions. The Inca, high in the Andes, used towers at Chanquillo to track the sun's creeping path along the horizon, marking dates accurate to within 2 days without writing or gears. On the opposite side of the world, England's Bronze Age Stonehenge timbers formed a circular alignment that captured the summer solstice sunrise over the North Sea. These weren't crude attempts but refined technologies of time, engineered by societies that saw the heavens as a living, breathing entity. The Polynesians took this further, navigating vast oceans by memorizing star paths that doubled as seasonal markers. When the Pleiades reached zenith, it was time to harvest breadfruit. When Orion's belt tilted a certain way, monsoon winds would soon shift. But celestial timekeeping wasn't just about survival, it shaped spirituality. The Jewish calendar, still used for religious observances, preserves ancient lunar rhythms where months begin with the new moon and holidays like Passover align with spring's rebirth. Hindu festivals dance to the sky's tune, with Diwali celebrated on the darkest new moon of autumn, its oil lamps mirroring the stars above. Even the Gregorian calendar we use today, though solar-based, carries echoes of celestial reverence, its very structure a compromise between pagan solstice celebrations and Christian Easter calculations decreed by the Council of Nicaea in 325 CE. The legacy of these sky clocks endures in unexpected ways. Modern farmers still plant by signs rooted in Babylonian star lore, while astronauts aboard the International Space Station witness 16 sunrises a day yet schedule their work by coordinated universal time, a system ultimately derived from those first stargazers who tracked time by the heaven's heartbeat. Their greatest lesson wasn't just how to count days, but how to live in harmony with a universe far grander than themselves, a rhythm we've both inherited and in our digital age nearly forgotten. The concept of a cosmic axis binding Earth to the heavens isn't just poetic imagery, it's one of humanity's oldest and most universal beliefs. Towering at the center of countless mythologies, this sacred pillar took many forms. For the Norse, it was Yggdrasil, the immense ash tree whose roots pierced the underworld while its branches cradled the realms of gods and giants. In Hindu cosmology, Mount Meru rose like a golden spindle, its peaks brushing the stars as deities and sages moved effortlessly between worlds. Even the stepped ziggurats of Mesopotamia weren't just temples, they were literal stairways to heaven, their terraced levels mirroring the layers of the cosmos. These weren't mere symbols, they were conduits, physical and spiritual pathways where the boundaries between mortal and divine blurred. What's striking is how these Axis Mundi myths share uncanny similarities across cultures that never met. The Siberian shaman's world tree, adorned with iron birds representing constellations, allowed them to ascend in trance states and negotiate with spirits for healing or wisdom. Meanwhile, halfway across the globe, the Maya envisioned the ceiba tree as the Wakachan, the raised-up sky, its roots tapping into the watery underworld while its branches held up the 13 layers of heaven. This wasn't coincidence, it reflected a shared human intuition that the universe had structure, a central axis where all realms intersected. Archaeologists find this belief etched into landscapes from the Omphalos stones marking Delphi as the navel of the world in Greece to the Black Hills revered by the Lakota as the heart of all creation. The Axis Mundi's power lay in its duality. It was both anchor and gateway. In ancient China, the Kunlun Mountains weren't just the world's pivot but the ladder used by the Yellow Emperor to ascend to immortality. Egyptian mythology described the Djed pillar as the backbone of Osiris, stabilizing the cosmos while allowing the god's soul to rise each night as the constellation Orion. These stories reveal a profound truth. Our ancestors saw the celestial dome not as a distant ceiling, but as a membrane one could cross if they knew the sacred pathways. This explains why so many Axis Mundi sites became pilgrimage destinations. Japan's Mount Fuji, believed to connect to Takamagahara, the plane of high heaven, still draws thousands who climb its slopes seeking spiritual awakening, just as Andean pilgrims trek to Lake Titicaca, the Inca's birthplace of the sun. But the cosmic axis wasn't just for gods and heroes, it shaped everyday life. Mongolian yurts were designed with a central pole mimicking the world tree, its opening aligning with the North Star to maintain cosmic harmony within the home. Norse law courts convened beneath great oaks, tapping into Yggdrasil's wisdom for fair judgment. Even Christian church spires, reaching skyward above crossed naves, unconsciously echo this ancient motif, turning entire buildings into Axis Mundi for congregations. The deeper we look, the clearer it becomes. These myths weren't escapist fantasies. They were blueprints for living in a universe where heaven and earth were intimately, inseparably linked. Modern science may have replaced world trees with gravitational forces and cosmic filaments, but the Axis Mundi's legacy lingers in unexpected ways. Our fascination with towering skyscrapers, space elevators, and even rocket launches betray that same primal yearning to bridge the gap between earthly existence and the stars above. When we stare up at the night sky and feel that inexplicable pull, we're experiencing what our ancestors knew in their bones, that the cosmos isn't out there. It's all around us, threaded through every leaf, mountain, and towering spire waiting to be climbed. High in the Arctic tundra, a Siberian shaman drums rhythmically, his voice rising in chant as the northern lights shimmer overhead, not merely as spectators but as guides. To the Unganasan people, these dancing lights weren't just atmospheric phenomena. They were the spirits of ancestors illuminating the pathway to the celestial dome. During trances induced by drumbeats that mimic the heart's pulse, shamans described their souls ascending along this luminous stairway, climbing the world tree's branches until they reached the upper realms where stars whispered secrets. Their voyages weren't metaphorical, they were navigational feats, mirroring the sun's daily journey or tracing the Milky Way's arc, which they called the ski track of the bird spirit. This celestial shamanism wasn't confined to Siberia. In the Amazon rainforest, Tucano shamans ingested yagé, a potent brew that dissolved the boundary between earth and sky. Visions revealed the Milky Way as a colossal anaconda, its starry scales holding the blueprints of creation. By flying along its length in trance, they retrieved knowledge of medicinal plants or predicted seasonal floods, practical wisdom encoded in cosmic form. Meanwhile, the Lakota of North America's Great Plains sought Hanbulchaya, or crying for a vision, atop isolated buttes where the sky dome felt within reach. Their sacred narratives tell of falling stars carrying messages from the spirit world, and of shamans riding beams of dawn light to consult with the morning star. What unified these traditions was the conviction that the cosmos wasn't a passive backdrop but an interactive theater. The Sami people of Scandinavia crafted Nowidi drums painted with star maps, their beats syncing with the aurora's flicker to open portals. Norse sagas describe Seidr practitioners, often women, who draped themselves in falcon skins to fly between worlds along the axis of Yggdrasil. Even the Buryat shamans of Mongolia timed ceremonies to celestial events, believing eclipses temporarily thinned the veil between realms. These practices reveal a sophisticated astronomical awareness. The Sami, for instance, used the Pleiades position to determine when to move reindeer herds, while the Maya linked their hallucinogenic rituals to Venus's cycles. The tools of these cosmic journeys were as varied as their cultures. Huacol shamans in Mexico threaded beads into intricate god's eyes that mirrored the night sky's geometry, focusing visions during peyote ceremonies. Inuit Angakuit wore star-patterned amulets carved from meteoritic iron, believing these sky metals enhanced their ability to commune with celestial spirits. The common thread, an understanding that altered states didn't divorce shamans from reality. They sharpened perception, allowing access to a hidden layer of the universe where stars were living beings and the Milky Way a river of souls. Modern neuroscience now hints at why. Psychedelics like psilocybin and rhythmic drumming can induce brainwave states resembling cosmic interconnectedness, suggesting these ancient practices tapped into innate human wiring for transcendent experience. Yet shamanic astronomy went beyond individual ecstasy. It served as communal cosmology. The Evenk people of Siberia's taiga saw the Big Dipper as a celestial reindeer herd, its movement guiding seasonal migrations. Navajo starwalkers memorized constellation myths not as entertainment, but as mnemonic maps for healing rituals where sand paintings replicated star patterns. When a shaman traveled to Orion to retrieve a lost soul or interpreted a comet's path as a divine warning, they were performing acts of celestial diplomacy, mediating between human and cosmic realms. This wasn't superstition. It was a lived science where the sky's rhythms dictated everything from herb-gathering schedules to peace treaties. The legacy of these sky voyagers lingers where we least expect it. The word ecstasy itself comes from the Greek ekstasis, to stand outside oneself, a fitting description of shamanic ascent. Modern astronauts report profound spiritual experiences when viewing Earth from space, echoing the shaman's cosmic perspective. Even our fascination with virtual reality and interstellar travel betrays that same ancient urge to step beyond earthly limits and touch the stars. The next time you gaze at the Milky Way, try seeing it as those shamans did, not as distant gas and dust, but as a highway awaiting travelers, its celestial currents humming with the voices of those who journeyed before. When we think of ancient astronomers like Hipparchus, the Greek genius who mapped over 850 stars with naked eye precision, or the Mayas' elite sky priests who calculated Venus's cycle within a fraction of a day, it's easy to see them as isolated geniuses. But their breakthroughs weren't sudden flashes of insight. They were the culmination of tens of thousands of years of collective human observation. Long before libraries or universities existed, curiosity about the celestial dome turned ordinary people into the world's first scientists. Take the builders of Scotland's Callanish stones, erected around 5,000 years ago. These towering monoliths aren't just arranged for solstice alignments. They track the moon's complex 18.6-year cycle, a pattern so subtle it requires generations of meticulous record-keeping to detect. That level of precision doesn't come from chance. It's evidence of an unbroken chain of knowledge, passed down through oral traditions and encoded in stone. What's often overlooked is how these prehistoric astronomers worked without writing. The Mayas' famous Dresden Codex, with its eclipse tables and planetary charts, seems sophisticated until you realize it's merely the surviving fragment of a tradition that began millennia earlier among Olmec sky watchers. Similarly, Hipparchus's star catalogue didn't spring from nowhere. It built on Babylonian clay tablets like the Emuel, a pin, which itself compiled observations dating back to the Sumerians in 3000 BC. These weren't lone scholars scribbling in isolation. They were inheritors of a vast, intergenerational project where temple priests and stone circle builders functioned like nodes in a prehistoric research network. The real marvel isn't their accuracy, it's their patience. Imagine tracking Jupiter's 12-year orbit across lifetimes, noting its retrograde motions without telescopes, or predicting eclipses by recognizing the Saros cycle's repeating pattern every 18 years and 11 days. This was science at its most resilient, forged through centuries of trial, error, and unwavering attention. The tools of these ancient astronomers reveal just how advanced their methods were. While we picture them gazing skyward from lonely hilltops, many worked with sophisticated instruments. The Greeks used armillary spheres to model celestial movements, while the Maya developed zenith tubes of vertical shafts in observatories like El Caracol that framed stars directly overhead with pinpoint accuracy. Even more ingenious were the Polynesian star compasses, mental maps dividing the horizon into 32 directional houses, each anchored to specific rising and setting stars. These weren't primitive attempts but refined technologies of measurement, as precise as the tools of Renaissance astronomers, just crafted from different materials. A Babylonian scribe's clay tablet and Galileo's telescope are separated by millennia, but both served the same purpose, extending human perception to grasp the cosmos's rhythms. Perhaps most striking is how these early astronomers blurred the line between science and spirituality. The Mayas' Venus tables weren't just astronomical records, they were sacred texts dictating when to wage war based on the planet's position. Hipparchus's discovery of precession, the slow wobble of Earth's axis, wasn't merely a mathematical feat. It shattered Greek notions of an immutable celestial sphere, forcing a philosophical reckoning with cosmic impermanence. This duality runs through all ancient astronomy. The same Inca priests who aligned Cusco's temples with the June solstice sunrise also presided over sacrifices to Inti, the sun god. For them, predicting eclipses wasn't about dismantling myth but deepening it. Each accurate forecast proved the gods communicated through predictable patterns, if one knew how to listen. Modern science often frames this history as a linear march from superstition to reason, but that misses the deeper truth. Curiosity about the celestial dome didn't begin with dispassionate observation. It grew from a profound yearning to understand humanity's place in the cosmos. When a Babylonian priest tracked Jupiter's path or a Polynesian navigator memorized the star compass, they weren't just collecting data, they were continuing the oldest human conversation of all. Their legacy isn't just in the star charts they left behind, but in the enduring wonder that drives us to look up and ask, what else is out there? A question as alive today as it was under the first stone circle's shadow. The oldest surviving depictions of the celestial dome aren't in books or temples, they're carved into humble boundary stones from ancient Babylon. These Kudaru stones, used to mark property lines over 3,000 years ago, feature tiered illustrations showing the heavens as a layered dome. At the top sit crescent moons and radiant sun disks representing deities, while below them march constellations like Scorpio and Leo, not just as stars but as divine protectors of the land. This wasn't mere decoration, it was a legal and spiritual contract, binding earthly ownership to cosmic order. The same sky that guided farmers and sailors also witnessed human agreements, its permanence guaranteeing promises made below. Medieval artists took this celestial symbolism even further, transforming parchment and stained glass into vibrant cosmoscapes. In the 12th century Hortus Deliciarum manuscript, Christ presides over concentric rings of angels and planets, mirroring the Aristotelian model of nested spheres. The dome here isn't just background, it's a sacred ladder, with each celestial layer representing a step closer to divine perfection. What's fascinating is how these images blended cutting-edge science with theology. When Chartres cathedrals rose window frames Christ amid zodiac signs, it's not contradicting astronomy but embracing it, the same stars that guided the Magi now illuminated Christian cosmology. This visual language spoke to both illiterate worshippers and learned scholars, proving art's power to unite faith and reason. The Renaissance shattered the celestial dome's simplicity but deepened its symbolism. Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel ceiling merges biblical narrative with Ptolemaic astronomy. God's outstretched finger doesn't just create Adam, but sets the celestial spheres in motion. Hidden within the vibrant frescoes are precise astronomical references. The separation of light from darkness mirrors the autumnal equinox, while the Libyan Sibyl's twisted pose aligns with the Milky Way's path. These weren't artistic flourishes but coded messages, suggesting human destiny was written in the stars' geometry. Even secular works like Dura's celestial maps incorporated zodiac figures alongside new scientific observations, bridging mythology and mathematics. Perhaps the most poignant celestial art comes from cultures without written records. The Pawnee people painted star charts on buffalo hides, with the morning star symbolizing both the planet Venus and the sacrifice of a maiden to ensure cosmic renewal. Aboriginal Australian dot paintings depict the Milky Way as the emu in the sky, its seasonal position dictating ceremonies and hunts. These works remind us that the celestial dome's symbolism wasn't about passive observation, it was participatory. To paint the stars was to commune with them, to claim a place in their eternal story. Today, while Hubble's images have replaced the dome with infinite space, its symbolic power lingers. Planetarium shows still project stars onto curved ceilings, and children draw skies as arched lines dotted with crayon stars. This persistence reveals something profound. No matter how far our science advances, we still instinctively frame the cosmos as a sheltering vault, a canvas where humanity's oldest questions and newest discoveries continue their endless dance. Lost star knowledge whispers to us from broken clay tablets and fading star charts, constellations that once guided civilizations but now linger in obscurity. Among the most intricate is the Babylonian Mul, a pin, a celestial compendium carved in cuneiform over 3,000 years ago. Unlike our familiar Greek constellations, this system divided the sky into 3 parallel tracks: the path of Onu for equatorial stars, the path of Enlil northward, and the path of E to the south. Here, the constellation they called the Plough wasn't our Big Dipper but a celestial ox-drawn implement, its position predicting seasonal floods. The star Sirius, known as the Arrow, was believed to pierce the sky's copper gates when it rose, releasing the summer's scorching winds. These weren't just pretty patterns, they were a working agricultural almanac where stars dictated when to sow barley or appease storm gods. Halfway across the world, China's 28 mansions wove the sky into an even finer tapestry. Each mansion, a cluster of stars spanning the moon's nightly path, served as a celestial inn where the lunar orb rested during its monthly journey. The azure dragon of the east, the vermilion bird of the south, these weren't solitary figures but part of a sprawling bureaucracy of stars mirroring the imperial court below. The mansion Zin Hot hosted the star Antares, believed to govern marriages and alliances, while Y Tail marked the scorpion sting, a warning of impending conflict when comets passed through. This system wasn't static, it evolved with dynasties as astronomers adjusted mansions to reflect shifting political fortunes or newly observed comets. What's haunting is how much has slipped away. The Polynesian constellation Te Punga, the anchor which once guided voyagers to New Zealand, survives only in fragmentary chants. The Inca's Urcachile, a celestial llama whose movements predicted weather changes, faded with Spanish conquest. Even the Norse Utgar, the Loki, a giant whose outstretched arms formed the Milky Way, lingers only in cryptic saga references. These lost systems reveal a truth we often forget. The night sky was never a fixed canvas. It was a living story, rewritten by each culture to reflect their fears, values, and survival needs. Rediscovering these forgotten skies does more than satisfy historical curiosity. It challenges our cosmic monoculture. Greek constellations dominate modern astronomy, but they're just one chapter in humanity's celestial library. When we learn that the aboriginal emu in the sky stretches not from stars but from the Milky Way's dark dust clouds, or that the Maya saw Orion's belt as the hearthstones of creation, we realize how much richness lies beyond our standard star maps. The celestial dome wasn't just observed, it was imagined, debated, and revered in countless dialects of light. Those lost constellations remind us that the universe, much like Earth, is a place of infinite perspectives, each as valid and vibrant as the last. When a comet streaked across Mesopotamian skies in 674 BCE, King Esarhaddon of Assyria didn't see a celestial spectacle, he saw a death warrant. His court astrologers scrambled to consult the Enuma Anu Enlil tablets, 7,000 omens etched on 70 clay tablets, where celestial events translated into earthly consequences. One passage warned, if a comet reaches the path of the sun, the king will die and his country will diminish. The terrified monarch took drastic action, installing a substitute king to absorb the omen's blow while he hid in seclusion, emerging only after the celestial threat passed. This wasn't superstition, it was statecraft where the stars held veto power over human affairs. The Babylonians refined this cosmic warning system into an exact science. Their astrologers tracked Venus's movements with obsessive precision, knowing its disappearance and reappearance as the Queen of Heaven could signal everything from bountiful harvests to invading armies. Tablet 63 of Enuma Anu Enlil spells it out. If Venus appears in the east in the month of Ajaru, there will be hostility in the land. What seems like primitive fortune-telling was actually a sophisticated data analysis project. Centuries of celestial observations correlated with historical events, creating a predictive model where planetary positions became probability indicators. When Jupiter and Mars converged in the field of Pisces, it wasn't just an alignment, it was a geopolitical forecast, warning of upheaval in Elam or unrest in Akkad. China's celestial bureaucracy operated with even greater precision. The mandate of heaven, the divine right to rule, depended on flawless astronomical interpretation. Court astrologers, known as the prefects of the Grand Scribe, maintained meticulous records where a single misrecorded eclipse could cost them their heads. In 213 BCE, two such officials were executed for failing to predict an eclipse that Emperor Qin Shi Huang interpreted as celestial disapproval. Their successors responded with brutal innovation, developing the world's first earthquake-detecting seismoscopes and compiling star catalogues so detailed they noted the sudden appearance of guest stars, what we now call supernova. The Crab Nebula's explosion in 1054 was logged as a broom star that swept away old dynasties, clearing the path for Song dynasty reforms. Even Rome, despite its pragmatic reputation, trembled before celestial signs. When a comet appeared during Caesar's funeral games in 44 BCE, Octavian seized the omen as proof of his adoptive father's divinity. The comet became the Julian star, cementing his political legitimacy. Centuries later, Constantine would claim his vision of the Chi-Rho symbol beneath a haloed sun before the Battle of the Milvian Bridge, blending Christian iconography with solar worship to forge a new imperial theology. The sky's messages weren't just read, they were weaponized, their interpretation a matter of life, death, and dynastic survival. What's often overlooked is how these omens shaped real-world decisions beyond the throne room. The Maya's Dresden Codex contains Venus tables not for abstract curiosity, but to schedule raids. Warfare was initiated only when Venus, the god Kukulkan, reached specific celestial coordinates. Similarly, the Aztecs timed their feared flower wars, ritual battles to capture sacrificial victims, to coincide with the Pleiades' zenith, ensuring the gods would witness their devotion. These weren't arbitrary choices, They reflected a worldview where celestial and terrestrial realms were inseparably linked, each influencing the other in an endless cosmic dialogue. Modern astronomy has stripped the heavens of their prophetic power, yet traces of this ancient relationship linger. When Halley's Comet reappeared in 1910, newspapers still sparked panic about poisoned atmospheres and impending doom. Today, we may no longer fear Mars retrograde as a war omen, but millions still check horoscopes, proof that the human desire to find meaning in the stars transcends millennia. The real lesson from these ancient astrologers isn't about predicting the future, but about recognizing our enduring need to see our stories reflected in the cosmos, to believe, even now, that the universe might still be whispering to those who know how to listen. The Maori's tale of Rangi and Papa speaks volumes about how ancient cultures perceived the cosmos. Imagine the sky father Rangi pressing so closely against the earth mother Papa that their children lived in perpetual darkness between them, until the forest god Tain Mahuta pushed them apart, creating the space we now call the world. This poetic origin story does more than explain daylight. It mirrors the very real separation of earth and sky that early observers would have recognized as fundamental to existence. Similarly, the Dogon people's intricate knowledge of Sirius, claiming their ancestors, came from its invisible companion star long before telescopes could confirm Sirius B's existence, hints at astronomical insights preserved through oral tradition. These myths weren't primitive guesses. They were sophisticated attempts to articulate the universe's architecture using the language of story. Egypt's creation narrative offers another striking example. The goddess Nut arches her star-studded body over the earth god Geb, held apart by the air god Shu, a celestial snapshot that doubled as a cosmic map. Nut's swallowing of the sun each evening and its rebirth from her womb at dawn didn't just describe the solar cycle. It positioned Egypt within a living cosmos where divine bodies moved with ritual precision. Halfway across the world, the Mayan Popol Vuh tells of the gods placing the Pleiades in the sky to mark time's passage after their failed attempts to create humans. What's remarkable is how these stories encode precise astronomy. The Pleiades' heliacal rising did signal the Mayan planting season, proving their myths were both spiritual and practical almanacs. The Norse took this celestial storytelling to vivid extremes. Their creation myth describes the universe forming from the void of Ginnungagap, where fire and ice met to create the giant Ymir. When the god slew him, his skull became the celestial dome, his brains the clouds, and his scattered sparks the stars, a brutal yet beautiful explanation for why the heavens appear fragmented. This wasn't pure imagination. It reflects how Norse seafarers actually navigated using star fragments, constellations, fixed to what they perceived as a physical dome. Even the Greeks' Titan Atlas, condemned to hold up the celestial sphere, personified their understanding that the sky required cosmic support, a notion shared by Hindu myths where the serpent Shesha bears the weight of the planets on its hood. Perhaps most fascinating are the common threads weaving through these disparate traditions. The Babylonian Enuma Elish, carved into 7 clay tablets, tells of the god Marduk slicing the chaotic dragon Tiamat in half to form heaven and earth, mirroring the Maori's separation myth. The Aboriginal Australian emu in the sky creation story, where the celestial emu's eggs hatch the world, parallels the Dogon's emphasis on celestial fertility. These recurring themes, separation, sacrifice, celestial scaffolding, suggest that across continents, humanity was grappling with the same awe-inspiring questions. Why is the sky above? What holds it up? How are we connected to it? These creation stories did more than satisfy curiosity. They shaped civilizations. China's Pangu myth, where the giant's body transforms into geographical features with his breath becoming wind and clouds, directly influenced Feng Shui's principles of harmony between earth and sky. The Iroquois sky woman falling through a hole in the celestial world onto Turtle's back established their concept of land as a shared responsibility, a worldview that shaped their democratic confederacy. When we dismiss these narratives as mere folklore, we overlook their genius. They packaged complex astronomy, ecology, and ethics into memorable frameworks that guided societies for millennia. The celestial dome wasn't just scenery in these myths, it was the first classroom, the original holy text, and humanity's most enduring muse. The Babylonians didn't just watch the skies, they cracked the celestial code. Hidden within their meticulous records of lunar eclipses lay a startling pattern. Every 18 years and 11 days, the sun, moon, and earth realigned in near-identical geometry, producing eerily similar eclipses. This Saros cycle wasn't just a curiosity, it became their celestial crystal ball. By tracking these repetitions across generations, scribes could predict not just when an eclipse would occur, but its duration, path, even whether it would be partial or total. One tablet from Yurok records a prediction made in 480 BC that matched reality to within 33 minutes, a feat of naked eye astronomy that still astounds mathematicians today. But the real genius lay in how they wielded this knowledge. When the lunar disk began darkening exactly as foretold, Babylonian priests didn't credit their math. They staged elaborate rituals to defeat the demon they claimed caused the eclipse. By restoring the moon through chants and sacrifices, they transformed scientific prediction into divine theater, cementing their role as mediators between heaven and earth. This wasn't fraud, it was psychological mastery, turning terrifying celestial chaos into a scripted performance where they held the starring role. Across the Atlantic, a different approach emerged at Stonehenge. The monument's 56 Aubrey holes, long dismissed as mere burial pits, may have functioned as a prehistoric eclipse calculator. By moving markers around this stone circle in sync with the moon's phases and nodal cycles points where its path crosses the sun's, Neolithic astronomers could anticipate when Earth's shadow would fall. The evidence, 3 concentric carvings at Ireland's Loughgrew cairns, showing the moon's phases alongside a total eclipse's diamond ring effect, suggest this knowledge spread across ancient Europe. Unlike the Babylonians' precise math, these megalithic astronomers thought in grand visual rhythms, their stones acting as celestial abacuses. China's celestial bureaucrats took eclipse predictions deadly seriously. Court astrologers who failed to forecast one could face execution, as eclipses signaled the emperor's lost mandate of heaven. Their solution was both brutal and brilliant. By combining the Saros cycle with observations of the lunar knots, where the moon's path intersects the ecliptic, they created eclipse canons accurate to within hours. The double brightness star mentioned in Zhou dynasty texts referring to a solar eclipse's corona reveals they didn't just predict darkness, they documented its most ethereal details. What unites these cultures is their willingness to think in centuries rather than seasons. The Maya's Dresden Codex contains eclipse tables covering 33 Saros cycles, a project requiring over 600 years of uninterrupted observation. At Newgrange, winter solstice sunlight hasn't just illuminated the passage tomb for 5,000 years. It's done so through a roof box aligned to a precession cycle our ancestors shouldn't have known existed. These weren't random guesses but the fruits of patient generational labor, where grandfathers taught grandsons to watch for specific star patterns before certain eclipses, or how the color of the darkened moon hinted at atmospheric conditions. The true marvel isn't their accuracy, it's their worldview. Where we see gravity and orbital mechanics, they saw cosmic conversations. An Assyrian relief shows priests flanking a ziggurat during an eclipse, holding cords to pull the moon free from darkness, a beautiful blend of metaphor and mechanics where celestial prediction and celestial intervention became one. These ancient astronomers remind us that science and wonder aren't opposites, they're partners, and their legacy lives on every time we look up and know with certainty when the next eclipse will come. Celestial symbols didn't just decorate ancient texts, they pulsed with meaning, transforming ink and clay into portals between earth and sky. The earliest known example comes from Uruk, where Mesopotamian scribes pressed reed styluses into wet clay to create cuneiform signs for star, a simple cluster of dots, and god, a star placed before a human figure. This wasn't shorthand, it was theology in glyph form, a direct link between celestial bodies and divine power. When the symbol for Venus doubled as the name of the goddess Ishtar, or when the sun sign represented both the fiery disk and the god Shamash, they were encoding a fundamental belief: the heavens weren't just observed, they were spoken into being through written word. The Maya took this fusion further, weaving astronomy into the very structure of their writing. Their glyph for moon didn't just signify the lunar orbit changed form to reflect phases, from a crescent to a full circle, mirroring the sky's transformations on paper. Glyphs representing the black sun of eclipses showed the solar disk being devoured by a serpent, while Venus was depicted as a spear-pierced eye, reflecting its dual role as both mourning herald and war omen. These symbols weren't static, they breathed with celestial rhythm, their variations tracking planetary movements with a precision that still stuns modern epigraphers. A single Mayan almanac might contain dozens of subtly distinct sun glyphs, each marking the sun's position at specific intervals in its 365-day journey, a written dance mirroring the cosmic one. Egypt's hieroglyphs reveal another layer of this celestial language. The sun disk letter 1-3, 1F3 didn't just stand for Ra, it could morph into a winged orb when representing solar eclipses or sprout ram's horns during the festival of Khepri, the scarab god who rolled the sun across the sky. Stars letter 131, FC often appeared in clusters to denote constellations, their arrangement mimicking actual star patterns found in tomb ceilings. The most profound examples hide in the pyramid texts, where columns of glyphs curve like the Milky Way, and certain passages about the dead pharaoh's ascent are written in spirals, mirroring the celestial vault's rotation. Here, writing wasn't just about the sky, it became the sky, with ink and stone serving as earthly counterparts to celestial light. What's often overlooked is how these symbols functioned as practical tools. Chinese oracle bones from the Shang dynasty show the earliest forms of the character for sun, Chinese letter, a square with a central dot used to mark solar eclipses that scribes later verified as accurate astronomical events. Similarly, Aztec codices painted Venus as a smoking star with an arrow piercing its heart, a visual code warning warriors when the planet's dangerous apparitions were due. These weren't abstract metaphors but mnemonic devices, compressing complex observations into simple yet potent images that could be read by priests, farmers, and kings alike. The sky's regularity gave birth to writing's reliability, where a symbol's repetition mirrored a star's return. The legacy of these celestial scripts lingers in our alphabets today. Our letter O descends from the Phoenician symbol for eye, itself linked to solar worship, while the asterisk remains a tiny star frozen in typography. Even the at sign has cosmic roots. Some scholars trace its spiral to medieval scribe shorthand for the planetary conjunction symbol. Every time we write a date or glance at a calendar, we're using systems born from ancient stargazers who first pressed stylus to clay and thought, this mark will hold the moon. Their symbols remind us that writing began not just as record-keeping but as star-keeping, an eternal conversation between human hands and heavenly lights. Modern fascination with the stars might seem light years away from ancient sky myths, but the threads connecting us to our ancestors are stronger than we realize. Every time someone checks their horoscope on a smartphone or gasps at a SpaceX launch, they're participating in rituals as old as civilization itself, just updated with neon glow instead of torchlight. Take NASA Artemis program, named after the Greek moon goddess who once guided hunters. The parallels are striking. Where ancient priests tracked lunar phases to time sacred ceremonies, modern scientists calculate launch windows based on celestial mechanics. Both are attempts to align human ambition with cosmic rhythms, proving that our relationship with the heavens has always blended practicality with poetry. The resurgence of astrology in the digital age reveals another unexpected continuity. Those polished apps generating daily horoscopes, they're the direct descendants of Babylonian clay tablets that correlated Venus's movements with harvest yields. The zodiac signs we casually reference in memes were once part of a complex predictive system that dictated everything from Mesopotamian irrigation schedules to Roman military campaigns. Even the way we personify celestial bodies, calling Mars aggressive or Venus romantic, echoes how the Maya saw planets as capricious gods requiring ritual appeasement. The medium has changed from stone carvings to algorithm-generated TikToks, but the underlying impulse remains: to find patterns in the chaos, to believe the universe might still be speaking to us. Science fiction has become our new celestial mythology, repackaging ancient sky beliefs for the space age. The Force in Star Wars mirrors indigenous concepts like the Maori's mana or the Lakota's Wakan Tanka, an invisible energy binding all things, now set among distant galaxies instead of forest groves. Marvel's Asgardian gods, complete with their rainbow bridge Bifrost, are Norse mythology rebooted with quantum physics jargon. These stories resonate because they tap into the same archetypes our ancestors once projected onto constellations: the hero's journey, the cosmic battle between order and chaos, the longing to belong to something grander than ourselves. Perhaps the most profound continuity lies in how we memorialize our cosmic ventures. Just as Neolithic cultures buried their dead with star-aligned monuments, the plaques aboard Pioneer probes and Voyager's golden records serve as modern-day Kudaru stones, boundary markers for the celestial realm we're now physically entering. The names we give space missions, Apollo, Cassini, Perseverance, aren't random. They're incantations, linking our technological prowess to the same awe that once made shamans paint star maps on cave walls. Even billionaire space races echo ancient pyramid-building competitions, where rulers demonstrated their divine connection through celestial architecture. The celestial dome may have shattered under Galileo's telescope, but its fragments still glint in our collective consciousness. When urbanites escape light pollution to gaze at the Milky Way, that gasp of wonder is identical to what a Bronze Age shepherd felt watching the same starry river flow overhead. Our telescopes have revealed infinite galaxies where our ancestors saw a stone vault, yet we still describe space as the final frontier, a metaphor that would make perfect sense to a Polynesian navigator or a Norse skald. The vocabulary has changed, but the song remains the same. We are still storytellers under the same stars, still reaching upward as our ancestors did, still whispering the oldest question of all into the cosmic dark: are we alone? The answer, perhaps, lies not in radio signals from distant planets, but in recognizing that we've always been in conversation with the universe, just wearing different technological lenses across the millennia. From stone circles to star myths, prehistoric cultures didn't just observe the sky, they lived within it, breathing its rhythms into every aspect of existence. The celestial dome wasn't a distant ceiling to them. It was a living membrane pulsing with stories, warnings, and wisdom. When Neolithic builders aligned Stonehenge to the solstice sunrise or Maya priests charted Venus's path with jaw-dropping precision, they weren't merely tracking time, they were stitching the cosmos into the fabric of daily life. Their monuments, myths, and rituals formed a sacred dialogue, a call and response with the heavens that shaped laws, harvests, wars, and even the contours of their cities. What's humbling is realizing how much they saw with so little. Without telescopes or satellites, they decoded planetary motions, predicted eclipses, and mapped constellations with nothing but patience, memory, and the naked eye. The Polynesians navigated thousands of ocean miles by memorizing star paths. The builders of Newgrange captured the winter solstice sun in a stone passage older than the pyramids. The Dogon people preserved knowledge of Sirius's invisible companion star long before modern astronomy confirmed it. These weren't primitive guesses, they were triumphs of human ingenuity, proof that curiosity and reverence can unlock the universe's secrets. Yet their greatest legacy isn't in the accuracy of their observations, but in the depth of their questions. When Babylonian astrologers tracked omens or Inuit shamans followed the aurora's bridge to the spirit world, they were grappling with the same existential wonder that drives our search for exoplanets and dark matter today. The tools have changed: silicon chips instead of stone tablets, radio telescopes instead of star compasses, but the longing remains. We still look up and ask, are we alone? What's our place in this grand tapestry? How do celestial cycles shape us, just as they did our ancestors? The celestial dome may have shattered under the weight of modern cosmology, revealing an infinite expanse where once stood a starry vault. But its echoes linger, in the way we instinctively wish on shooting stars or feel a shiver during a total eclipse or name Mars rovers after gods of war. These are more than sentimental holdovers, they're threads connecting us to those first storytellers who painted the heavens on cave walls and raised stones to catch the sun's first light. Their sky wasn't passive, it was a character in humanity's oldest story, one we're still writing with every probe launched into the void and every child's gasp at their first glimpse of the Milky Way. So the next time you step outside under a clear night sky, try seeing it as they did, not as a void to be conquered, but as a mirror. The same stars that guided ancient sailors still shine overhead. The same planets that inspired gods and omens still wander their eternal paths. We may have swapped torches for touchscreens, but the essential mystery remains. The celestial dome is gone, yet the conversation continues, an unbroken chain of wonder stretching from the first handprint on a cave wall to the faint radio signals of Voyager, forever carrying our questions into the